In the quiet town of Amakoya, nestled between rolling hills and ancient palm trees, lived a young girl named Agodia. Her beauty was the kind that turned heads, but it was her heart that truly captured the village. With a warm smile that seemed to chase away sorrow, and hands always ready to help, everyone, from the market women to the old men who sat under the iroko tree, spoke her name with affection. Children adored her because she always had the little moment to play or share her roasted groundnuts. To many, Agodia was a gift from the gods, but behind her glowing smile was a quiet ache nobody saw. Agodia had lost her mother at just 2 years old. Her father, Toby, a good man with gentle eyes, remarried a woman named Oma. At first, Agodia welcomed her stepmother with an open heart, eager to have someone to call Mama again. But that hope faded fast. Oma was nothing like her late mother. She was sharp-tongued, bitter, and always seemed to find fault in Agodia's every move. Worse still, she bore 2 daughters of her own, and quickly made it clear that Agodia was the outsider. The chores piled up, the beatings came without warning, and harsh words were as common as morning dew. Yet, Agodia bore it all in silence. Toby tried to be present, but work kept him away most of the time. When he did return, he'd sit quietly with Agodia under the moonlight, brushing her hair and telling her stories about her mother. "You look just like her," he'd whisper. Those moments were everything to her, but even then she never told him the truth about Oma's cruelty. She didn't want to hurt him. Toby was not a man of many words, but his love for Agodia was the kind that didn't need explaining. Every time he returned from his long journeys, his clothes dusty, his face tired, his eyes would immediately search for her, and when he found her, sweeping the compound or tending to the goats, his whole face would soften. "My sunshine," he'd say, pulling her into a long, protective hug. He brought her small gifts, beaded bracelets, colourful fabrics, sometimes just fruits he knew she liked. And on quiet nights, they'd sit beneath the stars, her head resting against his shoulder as he hummed songs his mother once sang to him. But in those moments, Toby's heart also carried weight. He saw the bruises sometimes, heard the harsh tones Oma used. Yet, Agodia never complained, not once. Instead, she smiled, always smiling. He often wondered if it was courage or fear that kept her silent. Then, just weeks after her 12th birthday, Toby grew ill. It started with a cough, then weakness, and then one night, he closed his eyes and never opened them again. Agodia cried loudly. She sat beside his mat, broken and still, alone in a house where love had died with him. 8 years moved like a slow river, sometimes still, sometimes stormy. Agodia was now 20. No longer the timid girl who once clung to her father's arm, but a woman whose beauty made the wind pause. Her skin glowed like polished bronze under the sun, her waist slender like the stem of a young palm, and her eyes held a quiet strength, the kind that could speak without words. Despite the heaviness she had grown up with, Agodia carried herself with the grace of royalty. She didn't chase attention, it followed her. Whether she was at the stream fetching water or helping an elder carry firewood, villagers would whisper, "That is Toby's daughter, the one who walks like a morning breeze." But where the village saw light, Oma saw competition. It burned her that people no longer praised her own daughter, Kamsi. They said she was just there, while Agodia was God's own handiwork. Each compliment Agodia received felt like a dagger to Oma's pride. Bitterness bloomed in her like a weed. She began to resent every inch of Agodia's presence, her laughter, her poise, her silence. "She must learn her place," Oma would mutter at night, her eyes narrow with envy. And so, behind closed doors and in the shadows of the compound, Oma began to plot, not just to humble Agodia, but to break her spirit. At the city of vibrant streets and tall buildings, by the road stood a handsome man. His name is Chidi. He was a sales manager in a company that later went bankrupt, and now he is a Keke driver who tries his possible best to make a living and take care of himself and his mother in the village. He often goes back to village to visit her and to keep her company ever since his father died. One day he sat with her mother by the bench under the tree. Her mother brought up about getting married. Chidi didn't want to get married yet, but he is the only child and son. His mother is old. He decided to honor his mother's wish after a lot of persuasion, as her mother told her she had found a wife for him. One day, Oma announced to Agodia that she would be getting married, that she wouldn't be taken care of her and her 2 daughters all together in this house. Agodia stood still, her hands trembling around the broom she was holding. "I have gotten a man for you that would marry you," Oma said flatly, not even glancing at her. "A Keke rider from the city. He's agreed to take you." Just like that, her future was handed to her like a second-hand wrapper. Chidi arrived a few days later, wearing modest shoes, clean shirt, and a heart full of quiet dignity. He was not what the villagers expected. Though he drove a tricycle to make ends meet, he spoke with clarity and calm, his tongue smooth like someone who once sat in classrooms with fans spinning above his head. He was kind, too kind. When he greeted Agodia, he bowed slightly, as if she deserved honor even in chains. "I know this isn't your choice," he said softly the night they met alone, "but I promise never to harm you." To Oma, this marriage was a punishment, a way to cut Agodia down to size. To the villagers, it was a waste. From beauty to burden, they whispered. But Agodia saw something different. Chidi didn't just look at her. He saw her. Maybe, just maybe, this was her way out. A way out of a house where love was rationed, and kindness came only in dreams. A way to start again with someone who had nothing, but also no hate. So, with a deep breath and a quiet heart, Agodia said yes. Not to the marriage, but to the possibility of peace. After the rites, Chidi took Agodia with him to the city. The city buzzed like a restless spirit. Cars honking, people shouting, radios blaring from nearby stalls. It was nothing like the quiet village Agodia knew. But as Chidi led her up the narrow stairs of an old concrete building, she felt something unfamiliar. Hope. Their apartment was barely 2 rooms, one for sleeping, one for everything else. The kitchen was just a corner with a small stove, and the bathroom was down the hall, shared with neighbors. But to Agodia, it felt like a palace compared to the silence and shadows of her stepmother's home. Chidi moved around the apartment with calm familiarity. He laid out their few belongings, neatly folded shirts, 2 plates, a kettle with a broken handle. He smiled as he handed her the key. "This is your home now, too." Agodia adjusted quickly. She swept the floor each morning, boiled water for Chidi's bath, and waited for him at the window every evening. They talked late into the night, about dreams, about what-ifs, about God. Their conversation grew into little love. He called her "my sunshine," and it wasn't just a pet name. He meant it. They had little, but their love grew in the cracks of struggle. They laughed over burnt rice. They prayed when the power went out. They found joy in shared bread and whispered dreams. And though the world outside moved fast and loud, inside that small apartment, Agodia found something she had never truly known. Peace, wrapped in humility and honest love. Few months later, Agodia set up a business to keep herself busy to help Chidi out. The sun was barely up when Agodia set out her baskets. Mangoes, oranges, bananas, all arranged with care. Her small fruit stall stood at a dusty corner of a bustling city street, tucked between a barbing salon and a tailor's kiosk. It wasn't much, but the profits added to Chidi's daily hustle, and every penny mattered. But one day, everything changed. One afternoon, a sleek black Mercedes-Benz screeched to a stop beside her stall. The driver's window slid down with an impatient buzz. Inside sat a well-dressed man, his brows drawn tight in frustration. "You don't have pawpaw," he snapped without greeting. Agodia smiled gently. "No, sir, I don't have pawpaw today, but if you like, I will keep some for you tomorrow." He rolled his eyes. "Everything in this country just pisses me off," he muttered, reaching for his wallet. As he counted money with visible irritation, Agodia quietly bagged his fruits and added 2 extra oranges. "On the house," she said. "Maybe sweetness will follow you today." The man paused, surprised. His expression softened, just a little. While waiting for his change, he answered a phone call on speaker. "I need a sales manager, damn it! Someone honest, smart. Everyone's either lazy or full of lies." Agodia's ears perked. She hesitated, then cleared her throat. "Sorry, sir. Don't. Me to pray, but I overheard you saying you need a sales manager. My husband, Chidi, he's educated, used to work in sales before the company folded. He is looking for a job." The man stared at her for a moment, as if studying her courage. "Okay. Tell him to come see me, tomorrow. 9 a.m. sharp, and here is my card." Then, just like that, the Mercedes drove off. Agodia stood still, heart pounding. The city hadn't changed, but something had just shifted in the wind. That evening, Agodia handed the business card to Chidi, like it was made of gold. He said, 9 a.m. sharp. "Dress well, talk confidently," she added, eyes gleaming with hope. Chidi stared at the card, mouth slightly open. "Are you serious? A man in a Benz just gave you this like that?" Agodia chuckled. "Not like that. He normal buys fruits from me. He has quite a temper, but I used patience and oranges." Chidi was grateful and decided to honor the invitation. The next morning, Chidi put on his best shirt, faded but ironed, borrowed a tie from their neighbor, and carried years of untapped ambition into the office complex where the card had led him. The company was bigger than anything he'd ever stepped into. Glass walls, polished floors, buzzing phones. He met Mr. Emeka, the same impatient man from the Mercedes. But here, in his office, he was calmer, more focused. He read Chidi's CV in silence, then looked up. "Your wife speaks well of you," he said. "Tell me why I should trust her judgment." Chidi took a deep breath. "Because she knows the kind of man I am, and I will prove her right." Mr. Emeka gave a slow nod. "You start Monday." By the end of the first month, Chidi had not only learned the ropes, but had doubled the company's client reach. His charisma, grit, and honesty stood out in an office full of ladder climbers. Each night, he returned home with stories of sales, new contacts, and shared laughter. Their apartment still echoed with echoes of old struggle, but now it also hummed with the promise of something greater. 2 years moved like a dream, wrapped in reality. Chidi had gone from learning the basics of the trade to rewriting the company's sales playbook. Every quarter, he shattered targets, brought in new accounts, and inspired his team to do the same. Mr. Emeka, once skeptical, now called him the heartbeat of the company. So when the CFO retired, there was no debate. Chidi, former Keke rider, once looked down on, was appointed as the new chief financial officer. The news spread like wildfire. The couple moved out of their modest apartment into a well-designed duplex in a serene part of the city. Cream-coloured walls, glass windows, a rose garden Agodia attended to every morning. Everything was proof of how far they had come. Chidi set a nice good shop for her, where she sells cloths, well-upgraded boutique, and 3 employees. But success didn't change them. They still prayed together every night, laughed over burnt yam, and remembered the days when 1,000 penny naira was a miracle. Chidi never stopped telling people where he started, and he never stopped thanking Agodia for believing in him when he didn't even believe in himself. To the outside world, he was a boss in tailored suits, driving an SUV car. But at home, he was still Chidi, a man with the heart of gold and kind. The sun burned softly over Amakoya that Sunday afternoon, its golden rays casting long, quiet shadows across the red earth. A low, humming engine interrupted the calm. Villagers turned toward the sound and froze. A black, shiny Honda Pilot, shining like it had just come from the heavens, glided into the village square and came to a gentle stop. The door opened, and out stepped Agodia, radiant in a white lace dress, her skin glowing with grace and fulfillment. Behind her, Chidi emerged, dressed in a clean native attire, his watch catching the light as he smiled humbly. The people gasped, "This is Agodia. Is that her husband? I thought he was a Keke rider." Whispers turned to awe into celebration. Children ran behind the car, shouting joyfully. Elders straightened their backs. The local women gathered, singing praises and soft melodies. Oma watched it all from the side of her as she was coming back from the market, her breath caught in her chest. Her two daughters, who once mocked Agodia for marrying beneath her, stood speechless beside her. Shame sat heavy on their shoulders. The woman they had treated like dirt now walked like royalty. Without pride, only quiet power. Agodia greeted everyone with respect. She knelt before elders, offered warm hugs to old friends, and handed out gift bags with food items and wrappers. When she reached Oma's compound, she paused, her eyes soft but unreadable. Oma lowered her gaze, guilt flooding her like a rising tide. "Good afternoon, Mama," Agodia said, her voice calm. Oma opened her mouth, but no words came. For the first time in her life, silence felt like punishment. Agodia stood before the familiar compound, her childhood home, now shadowed by memories that once felt heavy with pain. The walls, worn but steady, seemed to hold the echoes of every silent tear and whispered hurt she had swallowed. Yet today, she carried no bitterness. Instead, she carried grace, a quiet strength forged through years of struggle and faith. Her stepmother, Oma, opened the door, eyes wide in disbelief. The same woman who once schemed against her now faced a Agodia transformed, not just in riches or status, but in spirit. There was no scorn in Agodia's gaze, only calm and compassion. Oma's silence spoke volumes, a sudden realization dawning. All her harshness, her jealousy, had unknowingly fueled Agodia's rise. Agodia stepped forward gently. "I forgive you, Mama," she said, voice soft but steady. "Not because you deserved it, but because I deserve peace." It wasn't a plea for acceptance. It was a declaration of freedom from anger, from the past. Turning away, Agodia took Chidi's hand firmly in hers. Together, they walked down the red dirt road, their shadows long in the setting sun. She was no longer the girl forced into a loveless marriage, but a queen who had risen from ashes, shaped by grace, humility, and love. As they left the village behind, Agodia looked once more at the place that had tried to break her, and smiled. Her story was no longer about pain, but about hope, forgiveness, and the power to rewrite one's destiny. Dear viewers, what do you think about this story? I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed the story, give us a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, and share it with friends. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss out on our latest updates. Thanks, and see you in the next video. Bye.